presented by Verizon. What a special evening we have for you as we celebrate 100 years of New York Giants football. This night will kick off a tremendous season in which we look back at the illustrious history of the New York Football Giants, your New York Football Giants. There are so many things throughout the course of the season in which we're going to unveil, including the top 100 players in the history of the franchise, kickoff weekend, and of course the Giants for the first time will be featured on Hard Knocks, which debuts on HBO on June the 2nd. July the 2nd, excuse me. All right, so we already would have missed the first episode. But we're going to talk about all of that throughout the course of the evening. But we want to really dive into the history of this franchise, one of the pillar franchises of the National Football League as it embarks upon season 100. And no better person to welcome to the stage right now than the president and CEO of the New York Football Giants, Mr. John Mara. John, as the fans made their way into the theater here at Madison Square Garden, the history just jumped out with the Hall of Fame bus and the uniforms. And you think about 1925 and when your grandfather purchased this franchise. I know the fans have always been most important to the Mara family. What does this evening of celebration mean to you?
Yeah, you know, what is amazing to me is the number of fans that have stayed so loyal to this franchise for so many years. And I guarantee you that many of the people out there are second and third generation fans and ticket holders, yeah. And that is something that is not lost on us, and that is something that we appreciate so much. There is no fan base, in my opinion, in all of sports that is as loyal as the New York Giant fan base.
John, your grandfather bought this team, and obviously you grew up with this franchise. From the stories that you were told by your dad, that 1925 team, that first year, and unbelievable players like Mel Hine, who was a Hall of Famer and was voted the MVP of the league. But it wasn't easy back then, right? I mean, they had to sign Jim Thorpe in almost like a barnstorming thing to sell some tickets.
Yeah, he lasted just a couple of games, and that it was strictly so that we could sell some tickets. And there were so many years back in that era where the team bled money. And there were so many years where I think my grandfather thought about selling it and getting rid of it. Fortunately, his sons, my father and his brother Jack, loved it so much that he decided to hold on to it. And here we are 99 years later. So,
John, the first championship was in 1927. There was no championship game. But then in 1934, is the famous sneakers game. What were your dad's recollections of that title in which the Giants won it?
And that was a game where the field at the Polo Grounds was frozen and everybody was slipping all over it in the first half and we were behind. And so they dispatched an assistant equipment man by the name of Abe Cohen to Manhattan College, where he absconded with all these basketball sneakers that they put on for the second half, and we ended up winning the game 34-13. So it takes a village sometimes.
That's right, and ingenuity. And then the Giants won another title in 1938. And after the years in the Polo Grounds, the decision was made by the family to take this opportunity to go to Yankee Stadium. What did that mean for this franchise?
I think Yankee Stadium was bigger and in much better condition than the Polo Grounds was in those days, and it really gave us a new identity. And really, for me, the teams that we had from that first year in Yankee Stadium, 1956, through the early 60s is what really set our identity. And that's when a lot of the people in this audience here and their fathers and maybe even grandfathers really became fans. Those teams with Frank Gifford and Y.A. Tittle, Charlie Connerly, Sam Huff, Andy Robustelli, so many great Hall of Famers. That to me really made us an institution in New York and really set the franchise on the proper course.
I want to ask you about your Uncle Jack, your father's brother, who was very instrumental before his passing of helping this franchise usher into the new era. What were some of the things that made him so important in teaming up with your dad?
I mean, they had an unusual partnership at the time that Jack ran the business end and my father ran the football. And my father did the scouting and made the personnel decisions. Jack made all the business decisions. And it was a unique partnership that worked very well for a long time.
Speaking of business, John, the National Football League is a powerhouse as it is today. And of course, you talked about the 56 team and the 58 game, the greatest game ever played, and the 59 championship, and then 61, 62, 63. The Giants were powerful. But it was your dad that was one of the people that was instrumental in kind of making sure that the NFL didn't turn into Major League Baseball with revenue sharing. Talk a little bit about some of the lessons you learned from him with that.
Yeah, I think, that was an era when television really started to find the National Football League, and teams were making their own individual deals with various networks. And the owners ultimately decided, I think at my father's urging, that we needed to split the television revenues equally, because the league, he always felt, was only as strong as its weakest link. And you need to make franchises like Green Bay competitive with franchises in New York and Chicago and in the bigger markets. And I think that's one of the reasons that the NFL is so successful today.
We got some sad news today for those who may not have heard, but Greg Larson, who was drafted by the Giants in 1961 out of the University of Minnesota, played 179 games for the franchise at center. He was a Pro Bowler in 1968, passed away today. Your thoughts and remembrances of Greg?
That's a very sad moment. I knew him very well. He was just from the time I was a kid at Fairfield University at training camp. He started with us in 61. He was our starting center for 13 seasons. He was a leader, a captain, one of the most popular players that we had, and just a great all-around individual. So I was very sad to hear about that today. But he really epitomized what it meant to be a Giant in that era.
John, when you reflect on it, obviously you were around it from when you were a little kid. We all have our favorites. I thought I was Ron Johnson diving over a pile of leaves when I raked the lawn with my dad. Who was your first favorite player as a kid?
Definitely Frank Gifford for me. And his son Cody is here today. Cody, why don't you stand up wherever you are out there. Yeah, there he is. Yeah. Frank was certainly a hero of mine early on. And then later years, it was guys like Spider Lockhart and Rosie Brown and Tucker Frederickson and guys like that I grew up with as a kid.
You think about that greatest game ever played. Obviously, the Giants didn't win that game, but it really kind of skyrocketed not only the franchise, but, the entire National Football League. Did your dad realize at that time that this was a moment that needed to be captured, not only for the franchise, but for the league?
No, I don't think he did. I think he was just more upset at losing that game. You think about, we win the championship in 56, and we go to the final championship game in 58, 59, 61, 62, and 63, and we lost each one of those games, and which is unbelievable. But that era really set the course for the franchise, because that is where we really developed our most loyal fan base.
John, as you got into your professional life, you had tremendous successes away from the organization. And then in 1991, you came aboard. And it kind of coincides with Tim Mara selling his half of the team and the Tisch family purchasing the other half of the New York Giants. And with the Maras and the Tisches together, the Giants have been to 3 Super Bowls and won 2 of them. What was that like? What was that like in those early years? Because I remember, Mr. Tisch, and that's the first thing he said to me. It's not Mr. Tisch, it's Bob. Call me Bob. That working relationship that developed and has led to the success that we've seen.
No, it was such a great relationship. It still is. But what I always appreciated about Bob was he really helped us, especially from a business point of view. He made us a much more professionally run organization on the business side. And I just was sad that he was not able to be there for the 2007 Super Bowl. He died 3 weeks after my father did. So he wasn't able to experience that. He was there for the 2000 Super Bowl, which is not such a happy memory for us. But we really had a great relationship, as I do now with all the Tisches and Steve in particular.
Yeah, and obviously, maybe one of the greatest wins in the history of Giant Stadium was the 2000 NFC Championship game, 41-0 over the Vikings. So that had to be special for those two gentlemen who were business partners.
That was special to be standing on the field at the end of the game, watching the fans celebrate. Probably many of you were at that game that are in this audience, and that was a special moment. I think you're right. It was our greatest win in Giant Stadium.
John, one final message as we kick off this 100-year celebration. Obviously, the Giants will open up the season at home against the Minnesota Vikings. It will be kickoff weekend in which there'll be a free fan fest at MetLife Stadium on Friday night. And there's all kinds of activities. And then a special halftime ceremony for you and your family and the Tisch family. Obviously, this has to be a really special time and something to be excited about.
It is special. And I think the thing that makes it the most special is what I said earlier, the appreciation we have for the multi-generations of fans who have been so loyal to us through good times and bad. Just know how much we appreciate that, and that's something that we do not take for granted, and that's something that I thank you all for from the bottom of my heart.
John, thank you so much. John Mara.